They called my name over the tactical radio loud enough to make every operative freeze. In front of the entire strike team, I, Samantha Reeves, was handed a formal notice and told to stand down from the mission. No reason, no explanation, just the cold precision of institutional rejection. Someone snickered. Someone else muttered, "Guess the counselor's daughter couldn't handle the pressure." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I said nothing. I just walked away, my dark brown hair falling across my face as I stood alone in the command center, watching the other operatives prepare for deployment on the monitor screens. At 32, I was older than most of the team members, with intense hazel eyes that missed nothing and a quiet determination that had made me an easy target. The air conditioning carried fragments of laughter from a group of younger operatives, all from military families, all sailing through psychological evaluations with suspiciously consistent scores. Commander Victor Harrington approached, his chiseled features arranged in an expression of professional regret that didn't reach his steel-gray eyes. "We've reviewed your psychological profile," he stated, voice clinically detached. "It indicates excessive emotional response patterns during high-stress simulations." His tone was reasonable, his words following protocol perfectly, yet the satisfaction lurking beneath his perfect composure was unmistakable to me. The mission briefing was concluding now, casting a blue glow across the tactical displays and equipment. I touched the worn silver compass fastened to the inside of my tactical vest. My mother's compass, the only thing I had left of her after the embassy bombing took her life 6 years ago. I ran my thumb over the tarnished surface, feeling the slight indentation where her initials had once been clearly etched, before years of handling had smoothed them away. Sarah Elizabeth Reeves hadn't been just any diplomat. She'd been a legend in international crisis negotiation, known for her empathy and psychological insight. Government officials would request her specifically for volatile situations, trusting her instincts more than intelligence reports and threat assessments. "You've got the touch, Sammy," she told me the first time I'd accompanied her to a minor diplomatic incident at the age of 16. "It's in your blood." The memory both comforted and stung. I'd promised her I would make a difference someday, really make a difference, not just analyze field reports from behind a desk. Now that promise lay shattered at my feet, another casualty of a system that valued detachment over connection. I was so lost in thought that I didn't notice the approach of Medical Officer Maya Chen until her calm voice broke through my reverie. "Rough day, Reeves?" The 45-year-old combat medic had a bandage wrapped around her wrist and compassion in her dark eyes. Her steady hands bore the marks of countless battlefield surgeries. Scarred knuckles, calloused palms, fingernails kept perfectly trimmed for precision work. Unlike most at the Special Operations Command, Maya had never treated me with condescension. I'd often found refuge in the medical bay, my psychological training earning me a modicum of respect from the veteran physician. Maya understood what others didn't, that my excessive emotional responses were actually an asset in reading human behavior and predicting reactions. "Just got my standing orders changed," I replied, keeping my voice steady with practiced control. "Apparently my emotional profile doesn't meet operational standards." The bitter words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I refused to let my disappointment show. Maya's weathered face hardened. "Harrington's work, I'm guessing? The same way your hostage negotiation simulation mysteriously escalated yesterday?" The unexpected insight caught me off guard. For weeks I had performed flawlessly in simulations and psychological assessments, only to face inexplicable scenario changes during critical evaluations. There had always been some documented reason. Protocol updates, security escalations, risk reassessments, all perfectly timed to undermine my performance. "Doesn't matter now," I said, turning to walk toward the exit. "I've got 48 hours to clear out my temporary quarters and return to the analytics division." Maya stepped into my path, her expression suddenly intense. "Hold up. You're just gonna walk away, let Harrington win?" My jaw tightened. "I fought every day I was here, Doctor." "They've made their decision." Maya glanced around to ensure we weren't overheard, then leaned closer. "What if I told you there might be a way to show them exactly what they're throwing away?" There was something in Maya's tone that made me pause, a conspiratorial edge that kindled a dangerous spark of hope. "I'm listening," I said cautiously. Maya nodded toward the medical bay. Walk with me." As we moved through the corridors of the command center, the older woman spoke in low, urgent tones. "3 days from now, there's going to be a training exercise for some diplomats from the UN, a showcase of the team's capabilities. Harrington's the star attraction, of course, leading the hostage rescue scenario they've been preparing for weeks." My eyes widened. The Cerberus exercise was the Special Operations Command's premier demonstration, a technological and tactical marvel that few operators ever got to participate in. "What's that got to do with me?" I asked, though a wild idea was already forming in my mind. Maya's eyes glinted with mischief and determination. "I've been watching you, Reeves. You've got insights these emotional robots couldn't touch with a decade of training. It's in your instincts, the way you read every situation, every person you encounter. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story." She paused at the medical bay entrance, turning to face me fully. "Your mother and I worked together during the Casimir crisis 15 years ago. I was there when they dismissed her concerns about security protocols, called it feminine intuition, when it was actually brilliant behavioral analysis. I was there when Harrington, then a junior officer, ignored her warnings and nearly got an entire diplomatic team killed." I felt a jolt as Maya's gaze flicked momentarily to the barely visible edge of my mother's compass. "You've got 3 days," she continued. 3 days to prove what you can do, and I know how you can do it, but it's risky. Career-ending for me, possibly worse for you." That night, the advanced training simulator hummed to life under my touch. Its controls familiar yet thrillingly different from anything I'd officially trained on at the command. Maya stood watch at the door as I settled into the operator's chair, my heart racing with equal parts fear and exhilaration. The soft blue glow of the screens illuminated my face, casting shadows that accentuated my determined expression. My fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, each command and scenario modification responding to my touch as if welcoming me home. "You've got 2 hours," Maya told me. "Make them count." As the simulation initialized around me, I closed my eyes for just a moment, allowing myself to be transported back to a different time, to elegant embassy functions and tense negotiation rooms that had been my first classroom. My mother's voice seemed to whisper in my ear. "Feel the undercurrent, Sammy. Don't just analyze the situation, become part of it." The memories flooded back with startling clarity. Sarah Reeves had been more than just my mother. She'd been my mentor, my champion, and my first glimpse into a world beyond our comfortable Washington, D.C. home. A respected diplomat with a gift for diffusing crises, she had traveled to the most dangerous corners of the world, using her remarkable empathy and psychological insights to prevent violence and save lives. On my 16th birthday, instead of the car or shopping spree other teenagers might have received, Sarah had taken her daughter to a minor diplomatic function at the Romanian embassy. I remembered the smell of expensive perfume mingling with the rich aroma of coffee. The polished marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers, conversations in multiple languages flowing around me like music. "Time you learn the family business," she'd said with a wink. The simulation program Maya had selected was no beginner's scenario. It was the advanced hostage negotiation module reserved for final stage operators. If I could master this, I could handle any crisis situation they threw at me. For the next 2 hours, I lost myself in the virtual crisis. The first few attempts were rough, the unpredictable hostage-takers' responses catching me off guard after months of training on more standardized scenarios. 3 times I failed, the simulation flashing red with hostages deceased notifications. But with each simulation, each virtual crisis, my psychological insights grew more accurate. My instincts, honed through years of unofficial exposure to diplomatic crises, began to assert themselves. The 4th attempt showed marked improvement. By the 6th, I was outperforming the program benchmarks. What the command instructors had dismissed as emotional interference was in reality the mark of a natural crisis negotiator who understood human behavior on an intuitive level. When the simulated hostage situation spiraled into unexpected violence, I instinctively executed a sequence of de-escalation techniques that not only stabilized the situation, but maintained all hostage safety parameters. By the time Maya returned to warn me that security would be making rounds soon, I had completed 3 complex scenarios with scores that would have placed me at the top of any class. "I told you," Maya said with quiet satisfaction as I reluctantly powered down the simulator. The security logs would show only routine maintenance checks, thanks to her careful preparation. "You've got the touch, just like your mother." Sarah could read a room better than anyone I ever knew. Before Harrington made sure her warnings went unheeded during that final mission. I glanced at the hidden compass inside my vest. "Why didn't you tell me you knew her so well?" Maya's expression grew somber. "Watching your friend die when her warnings could have saved her does something to a person." I tried to fight it back then and got nowhere. The system closed ranks around Harrington, the golden boy with the right connections. But seeing you work now, it's like history giving us a second chance. Our conversation was cut short by the sound of footsteps approaching the medical bay. "We've got to move," she whispered urgently, guiding me toward a side exit. Security. As we slipped out into the night, I realized we'd left the simulator running. A security camera mounted in the corner of the room blinked silently, its red light a silent witness to my unauthorized session. Maya noticed it too late. "Damn it," she muttered. "Someone's going to see that footage." I felt a chill of dread. "What happens now?" I asked, knowing that whatever slim chance I had of proving myself had likely just evaporated. But Maya's expression was calculating rather than defeated. "Now we accelerate the plan. You've got 72 hours to prove what you can do, and someone just saw you do it. Question is, who and what will they do about it?" The morning after my simulator session, I awoke to an urgent knock on my quarters door. Throwing on a t-shirt and tactical pants, I opened it to find Captain Zara Singh standing in the hallway, her dark eyes unreadable. At 34, Singh was one of the few female team leaders at the command, and known for her tough but fair approach. She was also, I noted with a sinking feeling, the head of internal security operations. "Reeves," Singh said crisply, "get dressed and meet me at training room 6 in 15 minutes. Don't talk to anyone on your way there." Before I could respond, the captain turned and strode away, leaving me standing barefoot and confused in the doorway. So this was it. They discovered the unauthorized simulator use, and now I was about to face the consequences. I dressed quickly, my mind racing through possible scenarios, none of them good. Best case, I'd simply be escorted off the base immediately, rather than having the 48 hours I'd been granted to pack my things. Worst case, there would be legal repercussions, possibly affecting Maya as well. The thought of the medical officer facing disciplinary action because of me made my stomach twist with guilt. As I made my way across the grounds toward Training Room 6, a smaller facility used primarily for small unit tactical exercises, I kept my eyes forward, avoiding the curious glances of passing team members. Word of my removal from active status had spread quickly, and I had no desire to fuel the gossip mill further. Captain Singh was waiting inside the training room, standing beside a covered piece of equipment that I immediately recognized as the simulator from the night before. My heart sank. There was no denying my actions now. "Close the door," Singh instructed, her tone giving away nothing. I complied, then stood at attention, bracing myself for what was to come. To my surprise, instead of beginning a reprimand, Singh walked to a control panel on the wall and pressed several buttons. Security cameras in the corners of the room powered down with soft beeps. "We have exactly 7 minutes before the system automatically reactivates," the captain said, turning back to face me. "That should be enough time for you to explain why you were using a restricted simulator after hours, and why your performance metrics broke 3 command records." I blinked, entirely stunned. This wasn't the conversation I'd expected. "You saw the footage?" Singh nodded, a hint of impatience crossing her features. "I monitor all security alerts personally." Imagine my surprise when I saw a supposedly washout operative, one who'd just been removed from active status, handling complex hostage scenarios with more skill than most of our veteran negotiators. She crossed her arms. "So I'll ask again. Explain." I hesitated, weighing my options. Lying would be pointless. The evidence was literally right beside us, but the truth implicated Maya, whose career was on the line. As if reading my thoughts, Singh added, "And before you try to protect Chen, don't bother. I know she helped you access the system. What I want to know is why." Taking a deep breath, I made my decision. Because Commander Harrington's assessment of my abilities was wrong. I said, meeting Singh's gaze directly. I've been analyzing crisis situations since I was 16 years old. My mother was Samantha Reeves, a diplomatic crisis specialist. She taught me everything she knew. My voice grew stronger as I continued, fueled by months of suppressed frustration. But from day one, something always went wrong during my evaluations. Scenario escalations, unexpected variables, psychological stress tests, all conveniently timed and never thoroughly investigated. I used the simulator because I wanted proof, for myself if no one else, that I deserved to be here. Dr. Chen just gave me the chance to show what I can really do without interference. Singh's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. The captain had faced her own battles in the male-dominated world of special operations. Rumors of her clashes with the old guard were well known among the newer recruits. "That's a serious accusation, Reeves," she said after a moment. "Manipulating evaluation systems is grounds for court-martial." I squared my shoulders. I know what I'm saying, and I know the risks. Singh studied me for a long moment, then glanced at her watch. 3 minutes left. "So what exactly was your plan? Break into the simulator? Prove you can negotiate? Then what? The transfer order is already filed." "I don't know," I admitted, the brief surge of defiance fading. It was stupid and impulsive. I just couldn't walk away without trying. To my surprise, Singh's stone expression softened fractionally. No, it wasn't stupid. Reckless, maybe, but not stupid. The captain moved to the simulator and pulled back the cover completely, revealing the sophisticated equipment beneath. "You know what this is scheduled for, right? The demonstration for the UN officials this Friday. Harrington's big moment in the spotlight." I nodded. Maya had mentioned the showcase. "What if," Singh said slowly, "instead of leaving the base quietly, you showed the brass exactly what kind of talent Harrington is pushing out the door?" As the security cameras hummed back to life, Singh stepped back, her professional demeanor firmly back in place. "You're restricted to base until your transfer is finalized, Reeves," she said loudly for the benefit of any monitoring systems. "I'll expect you to comply with all protocols during your remaining time here." With that, the captain strode to the door, pausing only briefly to add, "Dawson uses access code 7294 for his sessions. He's notoriously forgetful about logging out properly." And then she was gone, leaving me standing alone in the training room, my mind reeling with possibilities that had seemed impossible just minutes before. That night, as I slipped into the simulator using Dawson's credentials, I was startled by movement in the shadows. Sergeant Nathan Dawson himself stepped forward, his handsome face unreadable. "Figured I'd find you here," he said quietly. I tensed, ready to defend myself, but Dawson made no move to sound an alarm. "Harrington assigned me to watch you," he admitted, surprising me with his candor. "Said you might try something before leaving. Told me to record anything suspicious." He held up a small device, a voice recorder, then deliberately switched it off. I regarded him warily. "Why are you telling me this?" Dawson hesitated, then gestured to the simulator. "Last week I watched you talk down a suicidal hostage-taker in the Kingston scenario that 3 instructors couldn't solve. Then your evaluation suddenly showed you failing to comprehend basic de-escalation techniques." He shook his head, genuine confusion in his eyes. "It doesn't add up." Moving closer, he observed the screen displaying my last simulation scores. "I've been trying to nail that negotiation for weeks," he said, nodding toward the completed scenario statistics. "Harrington says it's essential for the demonstration on Friday, but I can't seem to get the timing right." For the next hour we worked together, me guiding Dawson through the complex psychological nuances of the hostage scenario. As we trained, Dawson revealed more. "Harrington's been altering your evaluation scores. I've seen him do it." And then the bombshell. The demonstration scenario for Friday, it's designated Crisis Scenario 97, with the name Diplomat attached to the file. I froze, recognizing my mother's unofficial call sign from her diplomatic service days. Dawson explained that Harrington had specifically requested that scenario, mentioning, quote, poetic justice and closing a circle. As we finished the session, Dawson's expression had changed from skepticism to quiet respect. "I don't know what they see when they look at you," he said, shutting down the simulator. "But I see someone who negotiates like she was born for it." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of clandestine meetings and late-night simulator sessions. Maya, Singh, Dawson, and I formed an unlikely alliance, each bringing unique skills and knowledge to our hastily constructed plan. During the day, I maintained the pretense of preparing to leave the base, packing my belongings and completing transfer paperwork with a resignation that fooled all but the most observant eyes. But at night, I transformed into the crisis negotiator I was born to be, spending hours in the simulator with Dawson's access code, mastering the complex psychological profiles, and pushing my emotional intelligence to its limits. "You're a natural," Maya observed during one such session, her gruff voice softened with something like maternal pride. "Just like your old man." Lieutenant Singh proved to be a formidable strategist, using her position as head of security to monitor Harrington's movements and communications without raising suspicion. It was Singh who discovered that the commander had scheduled a private briefing on Crisis Scenario 97, the diplomat, the night before the demonstration. "He's going to do a final review of all parameters," she reported during our meeting in a rarely used storage facility. "Standard procedure, but it gives him ample opportunity to make any adjustments he might want to ensure the scenario performs to his specifications." The implication hung heavy in the air. If Harrington had been willing to manipulate evaluation systems to keep me out of the program, what might he do to guarantee his own success during the highest-profile demonstration of his career? "You think he'd tamper with the scenario?" Dawson asked, his voice hushed despite the privacy of their location. He had been the most reluctant member of our conspiracy at first, years of conditioned loyalty to Harrington warring with his newfound conscience. But with each revelation of the commander's ethical compromises, Dawson's resolve had strengthened. "Not directly," Maya replied, her eyes hard with accumulated knowledge of military politics. "Harrington's too smart for that, but he might make subtle optimizations, tweaks to the hostage responses, adjustments to the aggression parameters. Nothing that would register as sabotage, but enough to give him an edge during the demonstration." I frowned, considering the implications. "Could those same optimizations be used against him?" I asked, an idea beginning to form. Maya's slow smile was answer enough. The plan we ultimately devised was audacious, requiring split-second timing and flawless execution. Singh would ensure my continued access to the base despite my official transfer, while Dawson would serve as our eyes and ears within Harrington's inner circle. Maya's role was perhaps the most crucial and the most dangerous. As chief medical officer, she would be present during Harrington's review of the scenario, supposedly monitoring stress indicators for the demonstration. "I can't stop him from making his adjustments," Maya explained, "but I can document them. And more importantly, I can ensure they're not as effective as he thinks they'll be." The risk was enormous. If caught, Maya faced not just dismissal but potential criminal charges. Yet the old doctor seemed almost cheerful about the prospect. "Some things are worth the risk," she said when I expressed concern. "Your mother would have done the same for me." Getting me from my quarters to the command center would require navigating multiple security checkpoints. "This will get you past level 2, Singh said, handing me a forged security badge. "After that, you're on your own." Dawson provided a security schedule showing a gap in surveillance between 1345 and 1405, a window of opportunity. "There's just one problem," he warned. "You'll have to cross the main operations corridor at peak shift changeover. If anyone recognizes you," the implications were clear. I would be on my own, deep in restricted territory, with no plausible explanation for my presence. The night before the demonstration, our plan was set in motion. Dawson reported that Harrington was more agitated than usual, snapping at team members and obsessively reviewing the scenario parameters for the 100th time. "He's nervous," Dawson observed with some surprise. "I've never seen him like this before." I understood the pressure all too well. The UN officials attending the demonstration weren't just evaluating the team's capabilities. They were assessing the future leadership of international crisis response units. For Harrington, the stakes couldn't be higher, which made him both predictable and dangerous. As darkness fell over the base, I made my way to a predetermined observation point near the command center, where I could watch Harrington's scenario review without being seen. What I witnessed over the next 2 hours confirmed our suspicions. Harrington moved methodically through the scenario parameters, occasionally conferring with Maya or consulting a tablet he carried. At several points, he directed the technical team to make subtle adjustments to various response algorithms. Nothing dramatic, but enough to customize the scenario's performance to his specific approach. Midway through the review, Maya clutched her side suddenly, face contorting in apparent pain. "Old injury," she gasped to Harrington. "Need a minute." The distraction gave Maya crucial moments alone with the scenario's diagnostic system, enough time to document the changes and implement subtle countermeasures. When Harrington finally departed, looking satisfied with his preparations, I remained hidden until Maya emerged from the command center alone. The doctor didn't approach my hiding spot directly. Instead, she made a show of checking her medical kit and heading toward her quarters. Only when she passed near my position did she drop a small object that glinted in the dim lighting. A data drive containing the documentation of Harrington's optimizations. What I couldn't know was that at that very moment, Harrington was reviewing security footage in his office, a glass of expensive whiskey in his hand, and a troubled expression on his face. Despite our precautions, something had triggered his suspicion. Perhaps a pattern in Dawson's movements, or an inconsistency in the base's security logs. The commander rewound the footage, studying it with narrowed eyes, searching for confirmation of the unease that had been growing in him for days. When he finally found what he was looking for, a brief glimpse of me entering a restricted area during hours when I should have been confined to my quarters, his handsome face hardened into a mask of cold fury. "Not this time, Reeves," he murmured, reaching for his phone. "Not on my watch." The day of the demonstration dawned clear and bright. Perfect weather for the outdoor portion of the exercises. I awoke before sunrise, mentally reviewing our plan one final time. The window of opportunity would be narrow, barely 3 minutes to move from the medical bay to the command center without being detected. Our conspiracy hinged on precise timing and the assumption that Harrington, confident in his position, wouldn't anticipate our move until too late. Thanks to Maya's documentation, we knew exactly what optimizations the commander had made to the diplomat scenario, subtle adjustments to the hostage-taker's aggression thresholds, and negotiation responses for an edge during complex de-escalation points. What Harrington didn't know was that Maya had implemented countermeasures, restoring the scenario's original parameters in ways undetectable during pre-demonstration checks. At noon, I met with my co-conspirators in our unofficial headquarters. Maya looked exhausted but determined. Dark circles ringed her eyes from a night spent meticulously calibrating scenario parameters to mask her modifications to the system. "The diplomat is ready," she reported, using my mother's call sign with reverence. "Harrington completed his pre-demonstration check an hour ago. Everything's exactly as it should be, which means nothing is as he expects it to be." Captain Singh frowned, checking her watch. "There's a problem. Security rotation changed. I'm assigned to the VIP section. I won't be able to clear your path as planned." She handed me a security badge with my photo but a different name. "This will get you past level 2. After that, you're on your own." Maya pulled me aside, pressing something small and metallic into my palm. "Your mother would want you to have this today," she said gruffly. I opened my hand to find a diplomatic service pin. Not the tarnished compass I'd carried for years, but a gleaming official emblem inscribed with Sarah Elizabeth Reeves' name and service number. "She earned this," Maya explained, emotion thick in her voice. "Kept it even after everything. Found it in her personal effects after the bombing." I closed my fingers around the pin, too moved to speak. This was more than a keepsake. It was a tangible connection to my mother's legitimate service, a reminder of what had been taken from her and what I was fighting to reclaim. At 1,400 hours, Harrington and his team took their positions in the command center. I watched from a monitoring station in the medical bay as the commander began his presentation to the assembled UN officials, showcasing the team's crisis response capabilities. For 15 minutes, I observed as Harrington led his team through impressive coordination exercises, demonstrating the unit's precision and discipline. It was, I had to admit, a masterful display. Whatever else Harrington might be, he was undeniably skilled. But skill without integrity was like a negotiation without empathy. Technically proficient, but lacking the human element that transformed crisis management into something transcendent. At 1,440 hours, my comm crackled with Dawson's voice. He's setting up for the hostage scenario now. Stand by. My heart pounded as I watched Harrington's team, my mother's scenario, loading on the main screens. This was the moment everything hinged on. The window that would either open or close forever in the next 60 seconds. Now, Dawson's voice came again. Security alert triggered in Sector 7. You have approximately 2 minutes. I moved swiftly through the medical bay corridor, only to freeze as a security officer rounded the corner. His hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Ma'am, this area is restricted during demonstrations," he called. Without missing a beat, I knelt by an exposed junction box. "Signal calibration check," I replied, gesturing to the wires. "Command's getting interference from the E sector." I pulled a diagnostic tool from my pocket, a detail Maya had insisted on for authenticity. The technical jargon and my confident tone worked. The officer nodded and continued his patrol. Heart hammering. I resumed my path to the command center, where the diplomat scenario awaited. As I approached the main control station, I felt a moment of pure clarity, a certainty that transcended fear or doubt. This was what I had been born to do. My hands moved over the auxiliary controls with confident precision, bringing the secondary negotiation interface to life. "Command, this is Operative Reeves, requesting emergency protocol override," I transmitted. "Authentication code Diplomat 736-9er. Scenario critical failure imminent." A confused voice responded. "Operative Reeves, there's no scheduled intervention. Please identify your authorization and location." "Command, this is Samantha Reeves. Authentication code, Diplomat 736-9er. Security protocol override Epsilon in effect." Static crackled across the comm system, followed by a suspicious voice. "Stand by for verification." My stomach dropped. This wasn't part of the plan. The override should have worked automatically. Just as I prepared to abort, a burst of electronic interference hit the command center's communication system. Maya's final contribution. When the system reset, only the automated protocols remained active. "Override Epsilon acknowledged," came the computerized response. Secondary negotiation interface activated. I engaged the system, feeling the immense responsibility surge through me as I took control of the critical hostage negotiation that formed the centerpiece of Harrington's demonstration. The main screens showed the commander's team deployed, with Harrington himself coordinating from the primary interface. Far across the command center, Harrington was just initiating the first contact with the simulated hostage takers, his voice confident and authoritative as he began the negotiation process that he had carefully optimized. Through my earpiece, I could hear the appreciative murmurs of the UN officials as they monitored his seemingly flawless approach. What they couldn't see, what only Maya knew for certain, was that the diplomat was responding differently than Harrington had expected. The subtle changes Maya had made were forcing the commander to compensate continuously, taxing his skills to maintain the appearance of effortless control. It was at this precise moment, as Harrington struggled with an unexpectedly aggressive response from the primary hostage taker, that my presence registered on his tactical display. "Command, I'm detecting unauthorized access to the negotiation interface," came his sharp voice over the comm. "Please confirm and advise." The confusion that followed was exactly what we had counted on. As controllers scrambled to identify the intrusion, and Harrington's team responded to the unexpected development, I seized my moment. With fluid grace, I initiated a separate negotiation channel, positioning myself as a secondary negotiator with the hostage takers. Through the cameras monitoring the command center, I could see Harrington's face as he realized what was happening. We locked eyes across the crowded room, separated by rows of equipment and personnel. I saw the instant recognition dawn in his face, followed by disbelief, and then fury. In response, I simply tapped my mother's diplomatic pin, now proudly displayed on my tactical vest, and gave Harrington a small, knowing smile. What happened next unfolded with the inevitability of destiny. Harrington, enraged by my intrusion, and destabilized by the unexpected responses of the scenario, attempted an aggressive negotiation tactic to reassert control of the situation, but the diplomat, restored to original parameters by Maya's careful work, didn't respond as Harrington anticipated. The slight miscalculation sent the primary hostage-taker into an escalation spiral. Not catastrophic, but definitely not part of the planned demonstration. I felt the tension in the room rising as I watched the situation deteriorate on the screens. Knew the dismay Harrington must be experiencing as his carefully orchestrated showcase began to unravel before the UN officials. For a moment I hesitated. The man had systematically destroyed my career, had been responsible for dismissing my mother's warnings. Justice demanded I let him fail spectacularly before the international officials and his own superiors. But something deeper than vengeance guided my actions as I keyed my microphone. Primary negotiator. Suggest reducing aggression stance by 40% and acknowledging the third demand as legitimate. I transmitted calmly, using the precise adjustment needed to counter the escalation. You're facing standard parameters, not your optimized version. There was a moment of stunned silence, Harrington struggling with both his scenario and his pride, before I saw his hands move across the controls, implementing my suggestion. Even now, I wouldn't let his ego endanger a mission, even a simulated one. The safety of the hostages comes first, I murmured to myself, before taking my negotiation to the next level. Then, with the insight my mother had instilled in me from my first exposure to crisis management, I demonstrated the correct psychological approach. My intervention moving with intuitive precision through the exact sequence of de-escalation techniques that Harrington had been struggling to implement. Command. This is Operative Reeves. I transmitted, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Commander Harrington appears to be experiencing difficulty with the diplomat scenario. Requesting permission to take primary negotiation control while he recovers. There was a long pause. Long enough for me to wonder if I had miscalculated. If my gamble would end with military police waiting when I completed the scenario. Then, to my astonishment, a new voice came over the comm. Deep, authoritative, and undeniably amused. This is Director Keller, UN Crisis Response Division. Permission granted, Operative Reeves. Let's see what you can do. I felt a surge of elation as I acknowledged the transmission. This was it. My one chance to show the world, and myself exactly what Sarah Reeves' daughter was capable of. For the next 10 minutes, I guided the hostage negotiation through complexities that combined textbook crisis management with the intuitive emotional intelligence I'd developed over years of unofficial training. Below, the assembled dignitaries and base personnel watched in amazement as an unscheduled operative outperformed the command's star instructor with apparent ease. Through it all, I maintained a perfect awareness of Harrington's position, noting with grim satisfaction that he had managed to stabilize his portion of the negotiation but made no attempt to interfere with my impromptu display. As I completed the final sequence, a technically challenging hostage exchange that I executed flawlessly, I keyed my microphone once more. This is Samantha Reeves, call sign Empath, requesting mission completion acknowledgement. And if it pleases the director, I'd like to dedicate this negotiation to my mother, Sarah Elizabeth Reeves, the finest crisis negotiator I've ever known. The request was met with a moment of stunned silence, followed by Director Keller's voice again. Mission completion acknowledged, Empath. And the record notes your dedication. As I guided the scenario to its successful conclusion, I felt a weight lifting. Years of suppressed grief and frustrated ambition releasing their hold on my heart. Whatever happened next, court-martial, disgrace, or vindication, I had honored my mother and the principles she had lived by. The negotiation interface responded to my touch like an extension of my own mind, the scenario concluding with graceful precision, as all 50 simulated hostages were secured without a single casualty. What I couldn't know, was that Maya Chen had one final card to play, evidence that would transform my act of defiance into something far more significant than personal redemption. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of testimony and evidence in the base's briefing room. Director Keller and senior officials reviewed Maya's footage showing Harrington making unauthorized adjustments to the diplomat scenario, adjustments that would have given him an advantage while potentially compromising negotiation ethics. When confronted, Harrington's arrogance finally cracked. The modifications were minor, he insisted. Standard practice for experienced negotiators. The excuse fell flat as Dawson contradicted him. detailing how Harrington had systematically falsified my evaluations. He told me it was necessary to maintain standards, Dawson admitted, unable to meet my eyes. Said that letting someone like Reeves succeed would undermine the program's prestige. Captain Singh corroborated this with her own investigation. "There appears to be a pattern, sir," Singh reported, placing a data tablet before the director. "Over the past 5 years, 32 candidates with excessive emotional response patterns have seen their scores manipulated. Samantha Reeves isn't an isolated case. She's just the first one who fought back effectively." Maya's final revelation truly shattered Harrington's remaining dignity. The embassy bombing that ended Sarah Reeves' life, the tragedy attributed to intelligence failure. Commander Harrington was the security officer who dismissed her security concerns before that mission. Maya produced a faded incident report. The official record shows a threat assessment failure that Sarah supposedly should have anticipated. What it doesn't show is that Harrington had overridden those same assessments. Modifications virtually identical to what he did to the diplomat scenario yesterday. "Is this true, Commander?" Director Keller demanded quietly. Harrington's silence was answer enough. The director turned to me. "Ms. Reeves, while your methods today were unorthodox, you have exposed a serious breach of ethics within our training program. Your mother was an exceptional diplomat whose life was cut short by circumstances that now appear to warrant further investigation." Commander Harrington was immediately relieved of duty, his demonstration officially recorded as compromised by procedural irregularities, while my intervention was noted as an unauthorized but technically superior response. The director directed a full review of all operative evaluations from the past 5 years, with Captain Singh appointed to the Oversight Committee, a redemption that would ensure fairness for future candidates. Most significantly, Keller personally rescinded my transfer, reinstating me with a probationary period under direct UN supervision. From his briefcase, the director withdrew a small velvet box. Sarah Elizabeth Reeves was posthumously commended last year. The evidence was compelling enough to warrant a formal apology and restoration of her service record. He opened the box, revealing a distinguished service medal. "This belongs to your family." I'd planned to mail it, but it seems fitting to present it in person. I accepted it with trembling hands, tears blurring my vision. "She never talked much about her struggles within the system," I said softly. "I think it hurt too much knowing people believed she'd failed." Director Keller nodded. "These instincts weren't flawed by emotion. They were buried by dogma. You made them live again." 6 months later, I stood on the training grounds where my journey had nearly ended. The morning sun painted the sky gold and rose as I watched a new group of crisis response trainees gather for their morning briefing. At my side stood Maya, her face creased in a proud smile. I touched the lieutenant's bars on my uniform, a commission earned after completing my probationary period with distinction. The investigation into Harrington's conduct had rippled through the entire Special Operations Command structure, uncovering systemic biases that had persisted for decades. Harrington himself had been dishonorably discharged. Under Director Keller's supervision, the command had implemented new transparent evaluation protocols designed to identify talent regardless of background or psychological profile. Later that afternoon, as I guided my team through a live-fire exercise, executing intricate coordination with fluid precision, I felt my mother's presence strongly. The silver diplomatic pin gleamed on my tactical vest as I showcased both my team's capabilities and my own extraordinary talent. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as I coordinated the complex operation, sweat beading on my brow, despite the cool air conditioning of the command center. Physical sensations anchoring me in the moment. This was real, earned through struggle and vindication. Far below, officials watched with admiration, captured by the perfect harmony of intuition and discipline in my leadership style. But my thoughts were elsewhere, on elegant embassy functions and tense negotiation rooms, on my mother's patient voice. "Feel the undercurrents, Sammy. Don't just analyze the situation. Become part of it." As I completed my demonstration and brought the exercise to a successful conclusion, I whispered, "This is for you, Mom." The team responded as if they understood, as if they recognized the rightness of a Reeves at their helm. When the exercise concluded with characteristic perfection, I knew I had found my place in the world, not just as Sarah Reeves' daughter, but as a crisis negotiator whose emotional intelligence had earned her the right to lead on her own terms. The journey had been filled with obstacles that might have broken a less determined spirit. But as my mother had taught me, no one can diminish your gifts if you believe in your own strength. 3 weeks later, my newly formed crisis response team was conducting a routine training exercise when the emergency alert sounded. Director Keller's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grave. "Lieutenant Reeves, we have a situation. A terrorist group has seized the Pacific Trade Summit in Manila. 53 hostages, including 17 diplomats from 12 nations." My team froze, looking to me. This wasn't a simulation, this was real. "The local authorities have established a perimeter, but negotiations have stalled," Keller continued. "The terrorists are demanding the release of political prisoners and safe passage out of the country. They've executed 1 security guard already and threatened more deaths if their demands aren't met within 12 hours. I felt a momentary flutter of anxiety, quickly replaced by calm focus. "What about the diplomatic security teams, sir?" "Neutralized in the initial assault. The hostage-takers are well organized and heavily armed." Keller's eyes met mine through the video feed. "I need your team on the ground, Lieutenant. You're the closest unit with specialized negotiation training." "We'll need transport immediately," I replied, already mentally cataloging the equipment and personnel requirements. "There's a C-17 waiting at the airfield. You'll have tactical support from the Philippine Special Forces, but you'll be leading the negotiation effort." Keller hesitated. "There's one more thing, Lieutenant. The head of the Pacific Economic Commission is among the hostages." "Who is it, sir?" "Ambassador Victor Harrington, Commander Harrington's father." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Victor Harrington, a legendary diplomat known for his hardline approach to terrorism, and the father of the man who had tried to destroy my career. "Understood, sir. We're on our way." As my team scrambled to gather equipment, Maya appeared at my side, medical kit already in hand. "I heard," she said quietly. "Are you okay with this?" I met her concerned gaze steadily. "The hostages' lives are what matter. Not my history with Harrington." She nodded, satisfied. "Just like your mother." The flight to Manila passed in a blur of preparation and planning. My team, 8 specialists, handpicked for their unique skills, reviewed what little intelligence was available on the hostage-takers and the summit venue. "The Marino Trade Center has 3 main entry points," Captain Singh explained, pointing to the building schematics. "The terrorists have control of all of them, with heavily armed guards at each position." Dawson, now my second in command, studied the terrorist leaders' initial demands. "They're asking for the impossible. The Philippine government will never release those prisoners, especially not Makarov. He's responsible for bombing 3 embassies last year." "They know that," I replied, considering the pattern. "These aren't realistic demands, they're stalling." "For what?" asked Chen. "That's what we need to find out." When we touched down in Manila, the situation had deteriorated further. The terrorists had executed a second hostage, an administrative assistant who had apparently tried to use a hidden phone. The local command center was a scene of controlled chaos. Philippine Special Forces commanders argued strategy with government officials, while intelligence officers desperately tried to identify the hostage-takers. General Santos, the Philippine Operation Commander, briefed me immediately. "We've identified the leader as Kazimir Volkov, former Russian Special Forces. He went mercenary 5 years ago and has been linked to at least 7 hostage situations across Southeast Asia." "Casualties?" I asked, studying the tactical display. 3 dead during the initial assault, 2 executed since. "We've established communication, but Volkov refuses to negotiate with anyone except a senior government official." I nodded, processing the information. "What about the hostages?" "Conditions?" "They're being held in the main conference hall. No food or water allowed in. We have thermal imaging showing they're keeping the diplomats separated from the other hostages." A familiar voice spoke from behind me. "They're planning to execute the diplomats one by one if their demands aren't met." I turned to find Commander Harrington, former Commander Harrington, standing in the doorway. He looked different, older, more haggard without his uniform. "Mr. Harrington," I acknowledged coolly, "what are you doing in this operation?" "My father is in there," he replied, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. Director Keller thought I might have insights into his security protocols. I studied him for a moment, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the rumpled civilian clothes. This wasn't the same man who had systematically tried to destroy my career. This was someone broken by disgrace and desperate to save his father. "Any insights to share?" I asked, professional despite our history. "My father wears a panic button disguised as a cufflink. If he can activate it, it will signal his exact position in the building." I turned back to the tactical display. "Has he used it?" "Not yet. Either he can't reach it, or—" Harrington didn't finish the sentence. I made a quick decision. "You can stay, but you report to me. Is that clear?" A flash of the old Harrington surfaced, resentment, pride, before being replaced by resignation. "Yes, Lieutenant." Over the next 4 hours, I established communication with Volkov, carefully building a rapport while gathering critical intelligence. The terrorist leader was professional, calm, and utterly ruthless. Exactly the kind of opponent who would recognize and exploit any weakness. "Your government continues to waste time," Volkov said during our third exchange. "Perhaps we need to demonstrate our resolve again." "Killing hostages eliminates your leverage," I countered, keeping my voice steady. "It's poor strategy, and you're too experienced for poor strategy." There was a pause, then a cold laugh. "You're not like the others they've sent. You understand the game." "This isn't a game. These are people's lives." "Life is always a game, Lieutenant Reeves. The only question is whether you know the real rules." The fact that he knew my name sent a chill down my spine. They had intelligence on our team, which meant this had been planned far in advance. As night fell, the situation grew more tense. The terrorists' deadline was approaching, and we had made little progress beyond establishing communication. The Philippine government remained firm. They would not release the prisoners. In the command center, tempers flared. "We should go in now, while we still have the cover of darkness," urged General Santos. "My men can breach from 3 points simultaneously." "And how many hostages will die in the crossfire?" I challenged. "Volkov has rigged explosives throughout the building. This isn't just about the armed terrorists. We can't negotiate forever," Santos insisted. "The president is facing pressure from 12 different countries whose diplomats are at risk." I studied the building schematics again, a pattern beginning to form in my mind. Something about the terrorists' positioning wasn't making sense. "They're too concentrated here," I said, pointing to the northeast section of the building. "If they were just holding hostages, they'd spread their forces more evenly." Dawson leaned in. "They're protecting something. Or someone." I turned to Harrington. "Who else was attending the summit? Someone who wasn't on the official roster?" Harrington frowned, thinking. "My father mentioned a special envoy was joining late. Someone traveling under diplomatic cover." His eyes widened. "Makarov." "What?" General Santos stepped forward. "Sergei Makarov is in prison." "No," I said, the pieces falling into place. "He was being transported. This isn't a hostage situation. It's a rescue operation disguised as one. They're not here for the diplomats, they're here to free Makarov." The realization changed everything. I immediately requested satellite imagery from the past 48 hours, focusing on vehicles approaching the Marino Center before the attack. "There," Dawson pointed to a diplomatic convoy entering the underground parking area. "Philippine diplomatic security, but the license plate doesn't match their fleet." I turned to General Santos. "They smuggled in their assault team using diplomatic vehicles, probably with inside help. Now they're creating a distraction with the hostage situation, while they extract Makarov through another route." "We need to move now," Santos insisted. "Not yet," I countered. "If we go in blind, they'll kill the hostages and still escape with Makarov. We need to locate him first." That's when Harrington's phone chimed with an alert. "The panic button," he said, eyes wide. "My father activated it. The signal originated from a service corridor near the kitchen, far from where the hostages were being held." "Why would he be there?" Santos wondered. "Because he's trying to tell us something," I realized. "He's showing us their escape route." I quickly formulated a plan, one that would require perfect timing and coordination between multiple teams. While the Philippine Special Forces prepared for a coordinated breach, I would lead a small team through the service entrance to intercept Makarov and Volkov's escape team. "This is too risky," Maya objected when I outlined my role. "You should coordinate from here." No one knows hostage psychology better than I do, I replied. If something goes wrong, I need to be there to adapt. The tension in the command center was palpable as we made final preparations. Harrington approached me as I checked my equipment. "Let me come with you," he said quietly. I studied him skeptically. "Why would I trust you?" "Because despite everything, I'm still the best tactician you have. And because my father's life depends on this." Against my better judgment, I agreed. "You follow my orders exactly. No heroics." Our four-person team, myself, Dawson, Singh, and Harrington, moved into position as darkness provided cover. The service entrance was guarded by two armed men disguised as maintenance workers. "They'll have a recognition protocol," I whispered. "We can't just neutralize them and proceed. It would alert the others." "What's the play?" Dawson asked. I studied the guards' body language, noting their relaxed posture and frequent checks of their watches. They're expecting a delivery. Something routine that wouldn't raise suspicions. Harrington nodded. "Food. The hostage situation has been going for nearly 15 hours. Even terrorists need to eat." Using local contacts, we quickly arranged for a legitimate food delivery service to approach the building. With the delivery driver's cooperation, Singh took his place, disguised in the company uniform. "Just act normal," I instructed her. "You're making a standard delivery," annoyed at being called out so late. Singh approached the service entrance, pushing a cart loaded with food containers. The guard stopped her, conducting a cursory check of the delivery. "Password?" one asked. Singh shrugged with perfect nonchalance. "Manager just said Pacific Summit delivery. You want the food or not?" The guard hesitated, then nodded to his partner, who radioed for confirmation. In that moment of distraction, Dawson and I moved in from the shadows, neutralizing both guards silently. "Clear," I whispered into my comm. Our team slipped into the service corridor, moving swiftly through the kitchen areas. According to Ambassador Harrington's signal, Makarov would be moved through the northeast service elevator to the parking garage. We positioned ourselves in an adjacent storage room, waiting. The minutes stretched like hours, tension building with each passing moment. "Team Bravo in position," came General Santos's voice over the comm. "Ready to breach on your signal." "Hold position," I replied. "We need visual confirmation of Makarov first." Suddenly, the service elevator hummed to life. Through the crack in the door, we watched as 6 armed men emerged, surrounding a figure in an expensive suit. Sergei Makarov, the notorious terrorist financier. Behind them came Volkov, and beside him, Ambassador Harrington, hands bound but walking under his own power. "Hostage with the package," I whispered into my comm. "Adjust breach timing. We need to secure the ambassador first." Beside me, I felt Harrington tense. His father was only meters away, a gun pressed to his back. "Wait for my signal," I warned him. Volkov's team moved cautiously down the corridor, checking each intersection before proceeding. They were professional, disciplined. This wouldn't be easy. As they approached our position, I noted Volkov checking his watch. 3 minutes, he said to one of his men. "Then detonate." My blood ran cold. They were planning to kill all the remaining hostages once Makarov was safely away. "Change of plans," I whispered to my team. "We take them now." "Dawson, flashbang on my mark." I keyed my comm. "All teams, prepare for immediate breach. Hostages in imminent danger. Repeat, immediate breach." 3, I counted down, watching Volkov's team approach the final turn before the garage. 2, 1, mark. Dawson tossed the flashbang into the corridor. The disorienting blast gave us the seconds we needed to move into position. Chaos erupted as Volkov's men scrambled for cover, shoving Makarov behind them. Ambassador Harrington seized the opportunity, driving his elbow into his captor's stomach and diving for the floor. "Father!" Harrington broke from our formation, racing toward the ambassador. "Harrington, wait!" I shouted, but it was too late. Volkov recovered quickly, raising his weapon toward the exposed figure rushing toward him. Time seemed to slow as I processed the situation. Volkov would kill Harrington, then the ambassador. Makarov would escape in the confusion. And upstairs, 50 hostages would die when the explosives detonated. In that split second, I made my decision. Instead of engaging Volkov, I launched myself toward the terrorist closest to Makarov, tackling him to the ground. As we crashed into a service cart, I seized his radio detonator, crushing it under my boot. Gunfire erupted around us as Singh and Dawson engaged the remaining terrorists. Through the chaos, I saw Volkov taking aim at Harrington's exposed back. Without hesitation, I drew my sidearm and fired, a perfect shot that caught Volkov in the shoulder, spinning him away from his target. The terrorist leader staggered, his weapon clattering to the floor. "Secure Makarov!" I shouted to Singh, already moving toward Volkov. The terrorist leader reached for a backup weapon, but I was faster, kicking it from his grasp and pinning him to the ground. "It's over, Volkov," I said, securing his hands with zip ties. Across the corridor, Harrington had reached his father, shielding the older man with his body as Dawson provided cover fire. "All hostiles neutralized," Singh reported, her weapon trained on Makarov. "Package secure." I keyed my comm. Team Alpha has secured Makarov and neutralized Volkov. Breach teams, proceed with extreme caution. There are explosives in the building. Throughout the Marino Center, the coordinated breach began. Philippine Special Forces entered from multiple points, systematically clearing rooms and securing hostages. "Lieutenant," General Santos's voice came through the comm. "Bomb squad has located and disarmed 6 explosive devices, all hostages accounted for." Relief washed over me as I processed his words. 50 lives saved. The mission accomplished. As medical teams arrived to treat the injured, I found myself face to face with Ambassador Harrington. The distinguished diplomat regarded me with curious eyes. "You're Reeves," he said, recognition dawning. "Sarah's daughter." I nodded, surprised he knew of the connection. "Your mother saved my life once, in Kazakhstan," he continued. "She read a situation perfectly when all our intelligence said otherwise." He glanced at his son, who stood awkwardly nearby. "It seems I owe my life to a Reeves once again." "Just doing my job, Ambassador," I replied diplomatically. The older man smiled slightly. "No, Lieutenant, you were doing what you were born to do." As dawn broke over Manila, the full extent of our success became clear. 50 hostages rescued without a single additional casualty. Sergei Makarov and Kazimir Volkov in custody, along with 6 other terrorists. A major international incident averted. Director Keller's face appeared on the command center screen, his expression for once showing unguarded approval. "Exceptional work, Lieutenant Reeves. The President has been briefed on your team's performance. He's quite impressed." "Thank you, sir. The team performed admirably. I understand you made some unexpected tactical decisions." I met his gaze steadily. "I trusted my instincts, sir." Keller nodded, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Just like your mother." He glanced down at a document before him. "The UN Security Council has requested you brief them personally on the operation. It seems you've made quite an impression." As the screen went dark, I felt a presence beside me. Commander Harrington, no, just Harrington now, stood awkwardly, struggling to find words. "You saved my life," he finally said. "After everything, it wasn't about you," I replied honestly. "It was about the mission, the hostages." He nodded slowly. "I was wrong about you, Reeves. Wrong about a lot of things." He hesitated. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." I studied him for a moment, seeing not the arrogant commander who had tried to destroy my career, but a flawed human being capable of growth. "What will you do now?" I asked. Harrington looked toward where his father was being treated by medics. "Try to rebuild, maybe learn from my mistakes." As he walked away, Maya appeared at my side, medical kit in hand. "You're bleeding," she noted, pointing to a gash on my arm I hadn't even noticed in the adrenaline of the moment. "Just a scratch," I dismissed. Maya shook her head with familiar exasperation. "Always downplaying. Your mother did the same thing." She began cleaning the wound with gentle efficiency. "You know, when Sarah and I worked together, she had a saying, 'The strongest negotiators aren't those who never feel fear. They're those who feel everything and use it as their strength.'" I smiled, recognizing the truth in the words. For years I had been told my emotional responses were a weakness, a flaw to be corrected. But today, that same sensitivity had allowed me to read the situation, to understand the terrorists' true motivations when others saw only the obvious. "She was right," I said softly. Maya finished bandaging my arm, then squeezed my shoulder gently. She would have been proud of you today, Sammy. Not just of what you did, but of who you've become. As the morning sun streamed through the windows of the command center, illuminating the tired but triumphant faces of my team, I touched my mother's diplomatic pin, still securely fastened to my tactical vest. The journey had been longer and harder than I could have imagined when I first stood before Harrington, being told I was too emotional for combat operations. But that same emotional intelligence had just saved 50 lives and captured 2 of the world's most dangerous terrorists. Some would call it vindication, but to me, it was something simpler and more profound. The recognition that our greatest perceived weaknesses often harbor our most powerful strengths. All we need is the courage to embrace them. The Manila operation catapulted our team into the international spotlight. What began as a hastily assembled unit born from controversy had transformed into something extraordinary, a specialized crisis response team with unprecedented success rates. The media dubbed us the Empaths, a name that would have been mockingly dismissed in the command's old culture, but now carried a weight of respect. 6 months after Manila, I stood in the gleaming hallway of the United Nations headquarters in New York, waiting to brief the Security Council on our latest operation. The marble floors and vaulted ceilings still impressed me, though this was my 5th appearance before the Council, Lieutenant Reeves. A familiar voice pulled me from my thoughts. Director Keller approached, his usual stern expression softened by something that might have been pride. In the months since Manila, he had become my most vocal advocate, championing our team's unconventional approach at the highest levels of government. The Council is particularly interested in your assessment of the diplomatic implications, he said, falling into step beside me, especially given the complexity of the Kashmir situation. I nodded, mentally reviewing the key points of my presentation. The Kashmir hostage crisis had been our most challenging operation yet, a delicate balancing act between Indian and Pakistani interests, with 58 civilian lives hanging in the balance. I've prepared a comprehensive analysis, I assured him, though I suspect they're more interested in how we managed 0 casualties than in my diplomatic insights. Keller's lips twitched in what passed for his smile. Don't underestimate yourself, Lieutenant. Your mother's gift for geopolitical nuance clearly didn't skip a generation. The mention of my mother no longer brought the sharp pain it once had. Instead, I felt a warm pride. In the past year, Sarah Reeves' approach to crisis negotiation had been vindicated, her methods now taught at the Command's Training Academy. Before entering the council chamber, I paused to check my appearance. The formal dress uniform still felt strange after years of tactical gear, but I had to admit the lieutenant commander insignia suited me. The promotion had come through just last week, accompanied by a personal note from the Secretary General herself. The diplomatic pin that had once belonged to my mother now had a permanent place on my uniform, authorized by special dispensation from the Department of Defense. Beside it gleamed the Distinguished Service Cross awarded after Manila, a recognition I had accepted not for myself, but for every too emotional operative who had been dismissed or overlooked. The Security Council session proceeded as expected, pointed questions about operational tactics, diplomatic concerns, and strategic implications. I addressed each with the confident precision that had become my trademark, neither downplaying the emotional intelligence that informed our approach, nor apologizing for prioritizing human life over political expediency. In conclusion, I finished, meeting the gaze of each council member in turn. The success of Operation Silent Bridge demonstrates that empathy and tactical efficiency are not mutually exclusive. By understanding the cultural and emotional contexts driving both the hostage-takers and the regional authorities, we were able to create a resolution that satisfied all parties while preserving every innocent life. The Russian ambassador, a stern woman known for her skepticism, leaned forward. Impressive results, Lieutenant Commander. But I wonder, can your approach be taught, or are we simply witnessing the exceptional talents of a unique individual? It was a fair question, and one I had anticipated. The core principles can absolutely be taught, Ambassador. In fact, we've implemented a training program at the command that integrates emotional intelligence assessment alongside traditional tactical skills. The initial results are promising, a 37% improvement in hostage survival rates across simulated scenarios. What I didn't mention was the resistance we'd faced implementing those changes. Old habits died hard, especially in institutions built on traditions of emotional detachment, but the numbers spoke for themselves. and even the most hardened traditionalists couldn't argue with success. As the session concluded, I was approached by a slender woman in a crisp suit, her silver hair cropped short in a practical style. Lieutenant Commander Reeves. She extended her hand. Dr. Eleanor Winters, UN Special Envoy for Conflict Resolution. I wonder if I might have a moment of your time. I recognized the name immediately. Dr. Winters was a legend in diplomatic circles, a brilliant negotiator who had helped resolve conflicts from Rwanda to Yugoslavia. Of course, Dr. Winters, it's an honor to meet you. We found a quiet corner in the delegates' lounge, away from the bustle of departing diplomats. Dr. Winters studied me with keen eyes that missed nothing, reminding me of my mother. I knew Sarah, she said, confirming my suspicions. We worked together during the early days of her career. She had a gift that couldn't be quantified by the military's psychological assessments. I nodded, unsure where this conversation was heading. I've been following your career with interest. Dr. Winters continued. Your approach in Manila was textbook Sarah Reeves, if Sarah had ever written a textbook. A smile flickered across her face. Which brings me to my proposition. She placed a slim folder on the table between us. The Secretary General is establishing a new division, a rapid response unit for emerging humanitarian crises. Not just hostage situations, but refugee emergencies, civil unrest, natural disasters, where human factors complicate traditional aid approaches. I opened the folder, scanning its contents. The proposed unit would combine crisis negotiation, psychological operations, humanitarian aid, and diplomatic intervention, a comprehensive approach to complex emergencies. The Secretary General believes you should lead it, Dr. Winters said simply. I looked up, startled. Lead it? I'm barely 6 months into my promotion to Lieutenant Commander. Rank is just a formality. This position would come with an automatic promotion to Commander, possibly Captain within the year. She leaned forward, her expression intense. This isn't about time served, Samantha. It's about vision, the ability to see beyond established protocols and understand the human element in crisis situations. My mind raced, calculating implications and possibilities. My team would come with you, naturally. In fact, the proposal includes expanding your current unit from 8 to 24 specialists, with training facilities in Geneva and a permanent operational headquarters at The Hague. It was an extraordinary opportunity, the chance to institutionalize everything we'd learned, to transform crisis response on a global scale. Yet something held me back. Why me? I asked finally. There are more experienced officers, diplomats with decades of field work. Dr. Winters smiled. Experience isn't always measured in years, Commander. Sometimes it's measured in insight. In the courage to challenge established wisdom when human lives are at stake. She gestured to my mother's pin. Sarah would have been perfect for this role, had circumstances been different. Now that opportunity falls to you. I closed the folder, buying time to collect my thoughts. I'd need to discuss this with my team. Of course. Dr. Winters stood, straightening her immaculate suit. The Secretary General needs your answer within the week. We're facing an unprecedented number of complex emergencies worldwide, Commander Reeves. We need your unique approach now more than ever. After she departed, I remained in the delegates' lounge, watching the New York skyline through the vast windows. The city sprawled before me, a testament to human resilience and complexity, the very qualities that defined our work. My secure phone buzzed with a message from Dawson. Wheels up in 30, new situation developing in Lebanon. No rest for the empaths. I smiled at the thought, gathering my materials and heading toward the exit. The Lebanon situation could wait another hour. I had a team to brief on a life-changing opportunity. The flight to our European headquarters gave me time to process Dr. Winters' offer. Maya settled into the seat beside me as our transport aircraft reached cruising altitude, her medical kit stowed neatly beneath her seat as always. You're unusually quiet, she observed, studying my face with the practiced eye of both a physician and a friend. The council meeting went well from what I heard. I handed her the folder without comment, watching as she scanned its contents with widening eyes. This is significant, she said finally, understating in her typical style. It's what we've been working toward, I agreed. A chance to change the entire approach to crisis response. Maya closed the folder, her expression thoughtful. Yet you don't seem entirely convinced. Leave it to Maya to read my hesitation. I gazed out the window at the Atlantic passing beneath us, gathering my thoughts. It feels like leaving the field, I admitted finally. Building programs, developing protocols, training others. It's important work, but it's not the same as being there, making the split-second decisions that save lives. Maya nodded, understanding immediately. Your mother faced the same dilemma, you know. After Kazakhstan, she was offered a position developing diplomatic security protocols. She turned it down because she believed she could do more good in the field. I hadn't known this about my mother, and the parallel wasn't lost on me. What happened? She excelled, continued saving lives directly. Until Belgrade. Maya's eyes clouded with the memory. Sometimes I wonder if she might still be alive if she'd taken that desk job. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I thought of the 50 hostages in Manila, the 58 in Kashmir, the countless others our team had saved through direct intervention. There's no right answer, Maya said gently. But remember, your mother didn't have a team like yours. She worked within a system that was designed to minimize the human element, not embrace it. You've built something different. So Commander Reeves becomes Director Reeves, Maya mused. Has a nice ring to it. Only if my core team comes with me, I stipulated. I'm not doing this without the people who made it possible. Maya snorted. As if any of us would let you go without us. We're the empaths, remember? All for one. As we prepared to depart Lebanon, I took a moment alone on the rooftop of our headquarters building. The Mediterranean stretched before me, sunlight dancing across its surface. In my hand, I held my mother's diplomatic pin, turning it over thoughtfully. For years, I had carried it as a talisman, a connection to her legacy, and a reminder of what had been taken from her, from both of us. But now it represented something different. Not a burden to avenge, or a standard to live up to, but a foundation upon which to build something new. The world was changing, slowly recognizing that emotional intelligence wasn't a liability, but an essential tool in navigating complex human crises. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Institutional resistance never is. But we had proven our approach worked. One life at a time, one crisis at a time, we were changing the paradigm. My phone buzzed with a message from Director Keller. Secretary General expects you in Geneva by Thursday. Congratulations, Director Reeves. I smiled, tucking the pin back into my uniform pocket. My mother had started this journey, blazing a trail in a world that wasn't ready for her approach. Now it was my turn to carry that vision forward, expanding it beyond what either of us could have imagined. As I turned to rejoin my team, I caught sight of a group photo taken after our first successful mission, 8 unlikely allies who had believed in a different way of handling crisis situations. In 6 months, that team would grow to 24. In a year, perhaps 100. Each new member carrying the same message into the field. That understanding human emotions wasn't a weakness, but our greatest strength. They had called me too emotional for combat, dismissing the very quality that would ultimately save hundreds of lives. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I felt no need for vindication now. Success was its own answer, and we were just getting started. The door to the rooftop opened, and Dawson appeared. Transport's ready, Commander. The team's waiting. I nodded, taking one last look at the horizon before following him. Then let's not keep them waiting. We've got work to do. 3 years passed like a whirlwind of transformation. The United Nations Humanitarian Crisis Response Directorate had grown from our original 8-person team to a global force of 143 specialists operating across 6 continents. What began as a radical experiment in emotional intelligence-based crisis management had evolved into the gold standard for international response protocols. I stood at the window of my Geneva office watching snow fall gently on the manicured grounds of the UN European headquarters. The peaceful scene contrasted sharply with the crisis reports streaming across my secure monitors. Civil unrest in Nigeria, flood refugees in Bangladesh, escalating tensions along the Turkish-Syrian border. Director Reeves, my assistant called from the doorway. The Secretary General's motorcade has arrived. I nodded, straightening my formal uniform. The navy blue and silver of the new HCRD dress uniforms had been designed to project both authority and approachability. No small feat in the world of international diplomacy. And Dr. Chen is requesting final approval on the Kinshasa deployment, she added, placing a tablet on my desk. Tell her I'll sign off after the Secretary General's visit, I replied, scanning the proposed team roster. Maya had developed an uncanny talent for matching specialist profiles to specific crisis types, another innovation that set our directorate apart from traditional response models. Secretary General Amara Okafor swept into my office with her characteristic energy, dispensing with formalities as soon as her aides closed the door behind her. "Samantha," she greeted me warmly, clasping my hand in both of hers. At 63, the Nigerian diplomat radiated vitality and purpose. Her appointment 2 years ago had accelerated our directorate's expansion, providing both political cover and unprecedented resources. "Madam Secretary General," I responded with genuine warmth. "Welcome to Geneva. How many times must I ask you to call me Amara when we're not at the Security Council?" She chided, settling into one of the chairs opposite my desk. I smiled, taking the seat beside her rather than retreating behind my desk. Old habits from military protocol die hard. "Speaking of old habits," Amara said, her expression growing more serious, "that's partially why I'm here. The Security Council has been reviewing the quarterly statistics from your directorate." My spine stiffened automatically. While our success rates were unprecedented, there were always political considerations that transcended pure operational metrics. "They're impressed," Amara continued, noting my tension with a knowing smile. "Especially the Chinese and Russian representatives, who were, as you might recall, the most skeptical about an approach prioritizing emotional intelligence over traditional force deployment." I relaxed slightly. The numbers speak for themselves. 97% hostage survival rate across 43 major incidents. Refugee processing efficiency improved by 68% in crisis zones where our teams coordinate response. "Indeed," Amara nodded. "But it's not just the numbers that have convinced them. It's the aftermath reports from local authorities, the testimonials from affected populations. Your teams don't just resolve crises. They leave communities better equipped to prevent future ones. This was intentional, a core principle I had insisted on from the beginning. Crisis response wasn't just about the immediate threat, but building resilience against future ones. That's why the Council has unanimously approved the establishment of the International Crisis Academy," Amara announced, her eyes twinkling with satisfaction at my surprise. "A permanent training facility to institutionalize your methodologies on a global scale." The implications took my breath away. We had been operating specialized training programs for select international teams, but a dedicated academy would transform crisis response across the entire international system. "Location?" I asked, mind already racing with possibilities. "That's your decision. The Council has approved funding for construction and a 10-year operational budget. You'll have complete autonomy over curriculum development and instructor selection." I leaned back, processing the magnitude of this opportunity. This could fundamentally change how the world responds to humanitarian crises. "That's precisely the point," Amara agreed. "Your mother's approach, developed and expanded through your leadership, has proven itself not just effective, but essential in our increasingly complex global environment." At the mention of my mother, I instinctively touched the diplomatic pin I still wore on my uniform. She never got to see her methods validated on this scale. "But she laid the foundation," Amara said gently. "And now her daughter will build an institution that ensures those methods outlive us all." After the Secretary General departed, I remained in my office, contemplating the responsibility that had just been placed in my hands. The Academy would need to balance rigorous tactical training with the emotional intelligence development that made our approach unique. It would require a faculty drawn from both traditional security backgrounds and disciplines rarely associated with crisis response: psychology, cultural anthropology, conflict mediation. My secure line buzzed, interrupting my thoughts. Captain Singh's face appeared on the screen, her expression indicating this wasn't a routine check-in. "Director, we have a situation developing in Venezuela that meets Crisis Category 1 parameters." I straightened immediately. Category 1 designated our highest priority: immediate threat to life with international implications. "Brief me." "The presidential palace in Caracas has been seized by elements claiming loyalty to former General Martinez. President Diaz and his entire cabinet are being held hostage, along with 37 foreign diplomats who were attending a climate summit." My mind immediately shifted to operational mode. Casualty reports? 12 presidential guards confirmed dead. No hostage executions reported yet, but Martinez's faction has issued demands for military control of the government and international recognition within 6 hours. I checked the deployment board on my wall. What assets do we have in the region? Team Lima is completing an operation in Colombia, approximately 90 minutes flight time from Caracas. Commander Dawson is lead. That was fortunate. Dawson had been with me since the beginning, one of my most trusted team leaders. Alert him to prepare for immediate redeployment once the Colombia situation is resolved. I want full intelligence assessment on Martinez, psychological profile, prior statements, known associates. Already underway, Singh confirmed. There's one more complication, Director. The American ambassador to Venezuela is among the hostages. The White House has indicated they're considering unilateral military action if the situation isn't resolved within their timeframe. I frowned. Uncoordinated military intervention would almost certainly result in massive casualties among the hostages. Get me a direct line to the White House crisis team, and have my transport prepared. I'm taking personal command of this operation. Singh's eyebrows rose slightly. It had been over a year since I'd deployed to the field directly, but she nodded without comment. Yes, Director. Transport will be ready in 30 minutes. After ending the call, I opened my desk drawer and removed my tactical field kit. The standard issue HCRD field uniform and equipment had been designed under my supervision, incorporating lessons learned from dozens of operations. As I changed quickly in the adjoining washroom, muscle memory took over, checking equipment with practiced efficiency. My desk phone rang Dr. Chen, still waiting on approval for the Kinshasa deployment. I authorized it remotely, then hesitated before adding a personal note. Maya, taking command of Venezuela situation. Meet me on the transport. Despite her administrative role as our chief medical officer, Maya remained the person I trusted most in field situations. Her calm presence and institutional memory were invaluable, especially in politically complex scenarios like Venezuela. 90 minutes later, our transport was airborne, cutting through storm clouds over the Atlantic. My command team had assembled in the aircraft's secure briefing room, a testament to how far we'd come from those early days of cramped military transports and improvised equipment. Martinez was Venezuela's defense minister until 3 years ago, Intelligence Officer Patel explained, displaying the former general's profile on the main screen. Dismissed by President Diaz after advocating military intervention in neighboring Colombia. Since then, he's cultivated support among mid-level officers dissatisfied with civilian leadership. Psychological profile? I prompted. Classic authoritarian personality with narcissistic tendencies, Dr. Rivera, our lead psychologist, reported. His public statements suggest a messianic complex. He believes he's the only one who can save Venezuela from what he perceives as weak leadership. I studied the intelligence assessments, a familiar pattern emerging. He's not actually interested in negotiation, is he? The hostage situation is theater, a demonstration of power. Rivera nodded. Precisely. Martinez needs to be seen as strong, decisive, and ultimately victorious. The hostages are props in his performance of leadership, which makes standard negotiation tactics problematic, I concluded. He can't be seen compromising without losing face with his supporters. There's another factor, Patel added. Our sources indicate Martinez is acting now because he's been diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer. Doctors give him less than 6 months. This changed the calculation entirely. A man with nothing to lose, seeking to secure his legacy with one dramatic gesture. Perhaps the most dangerous type of hostage-taker. So we're dealing with someone who may welcome martyrdom, Maya observed quietly from her position near the door. That complicates things considerably. I nodded, mind racing through potential approaches. We need to give him a victory narrative that doesn't require hostage casualties, something that satisfies his need for recognition while creating an exit path for the hostages. For the next hour, we developed and refined our strategy, incorporating intelligence updates as they arrived. Team Lima, now on the ground in Caracas, established a perimeter around the presidential palace while maintaining communication with Martinez's representatives. When we landed at a military airfield outside Caracas, the Venezuelan defense minister, loyal to the elected government, was waiting to brief me personally. The situation has deteriorated, Minister Guzman reported grimly as we walked to the waiting vehicles. Martinez has executed one hostage, the agriculture minister, and threatened to kill one diplomat every hour until his demands are met. My heart sank. Once blood was spilled, hostage situations typically spiraled into increasing violence. The American military response? Their special forces are positioning for an assault within the next 2 hours. With or without our government's permission. That would be catastrophic, I stated flatly. We need to delay them. Where's your command center? The Venezuelan National Crisis Center was a modern facility, built with Chinese assistance after the last coup attempt 5 years earlier. Commander Dawson met us at the entrance, his expression grave but controlled. Director, we've established communication with Martinez directly, he reported, as we strode through security. He's demanding to speak with someone of sufficient authority to guarantee international recognition of his government. Perfect, I replied, surprising him. That's our opening. In the command center, I quickly assumed operational control, a testament to the respect our directorate had earned that neither Venezuelan authorities nor the American military liaisons present objected to my leadership. Martinez needs legitimacy more than he needs hostages, I explained to the assembled team. We're going to offer him a pathway to historical significance that doesn't require further bloodshed. The plan we developed was audacious, leveraging Martinez's psychological profile against him. Rather than treating him as a terrorist to be defeated, we would approach him as a statesman with legitimate concerns about Venezuela's governance, concerns that could be addressed through constitutional processes rather than violence. I'll meet with him personally, I announced, silencing immediate objections with a raised hand. Not in the palace, that would validate his seizure of power, but on neutral ground. The National Cathedral, perhaps, with media present. Absolutely not, the American military attaché objected. We cannot validate his actions with high-level diplomatic engagement. We're not validating anything, I countered. We're creating a narrative that allows him to claim a victory while releasing the hostages. Martinez knows he's dying. What he wants now is to be remembered as a patriot, not a terrorist. After tense negotiations with both Venezuelan authorities and international representatives, my approach was reluctantly approved. The stakes couldn't have been higher: 52 lives, international relations across the hemisphere, and potentially the future of Venezuela itself. 3 hours later, I sat in the magnificent Caracas Cathedral, surrounded by centuries of history and art. The cavernous space had been cleared except for 2 chairs positioned before the altar, camera crews positioned discreetly in the shadows, and security personnel hidden throughout the building. Martinez arrived with a small contingent of armed loyalists, his gaunt face betraying the illness consuming him, despite his efforts to project strength. He walked with military precision to the chair opposite mine, ignoring the hand I extended in greeting. Director Reeves, he acknowledged coldly. The famous negotiator who never uses force. You'll find I'm not so easily manipulated by psychology. General Martinez, I replied calmly, I'm not here to manipulate you. I'm here because 52 families are wondering if their loved ones will come home alive. Their fate depends entirely on the international community's willingness to recognize the legitimate new government of Venezuela, he stated, eyes darting to the cameras. I nodded thoughtfully. You believe the current government has failed Venezuela. That's a political position many share, but seizing power through violence undermines the very legitimacy you seek. Martinez stiffened. Sometimes revolution is necessary when democratic processes are corrupted. Perhaps, I conceded, surprising him. History is filled with necessary revolutions, but history also judges harshly those who sacrifice innocent lives in pursuit of power. You think I care about historical judgment? He scoffed. I care about Venezuela's future. As do I responded, which is why I'm authorized to offer you a path that honors your concerns without further bloodshed. For the next 40 minutes, we engaged in a delicate dance of negotiation, all while being broadcast live across Venezuela and internationally. I never treated Martinez as a terrorist, but as a political figure with legitimate grievances against the current system. Gradually, I introduced the concept of a negotiated transition, internationally supervised elections, constitutional reforms addressing military concerns, and, most importantly, a historical commission to document the military's role in Venezuela's development. Your legacy is at stake, General, I said quietly, during a moment when the cameras were repositioning. Not just as a military leader, but as a Venezuelan patriot. Will history remember you as the man who executed diplomats, or the man who forced meaningful reforms without bloodshed? Something flickered in Martinez's eyes. recognition perhaps of the choice before him. He was a dying man, seeking immortality through action. I was offering him a path to the history books that didn't require massacre. The current president must resign immediately, he demanded, though his tone had softened slightly. President Diaz has already indicated willingness to form a unity government and call early elections, I countered. But he cannot negotiate under duress. A gesture of good faith is required. What gesture? Martinez asked suspiciously. Release the foreign diplomats as a demonstration of your commitment to international law. Show the world you're a statesman, not a hostage-taker. The negotiation continued for another hour, broadcast live to a transfixed global audience. Slowly, carefully, I guided Martinez toward the resolution we needed, a face-saving exit that protected his dignity while securing the hostages' release. When he finally agreed to release the diplomats as a gesture of humanitarian goodwill, I felt the tension in the cathedral shift perceptibly. It was the breakthrough we needed. I'll need guarantees from the international community, Martinez insisted, aware he was ceding ground but determined to extract maximum concessions. Of course, I agreed smoothly. The Secretary General has authorized me to convene an emergency diplomatic conference here in Caracas, with all relevant parties present, to negotiate Venezuela's political future. Your concerns will be central to those discussions. 3 hours after our meeting began, the first hostages emerged from the presidential palace. The foreign diplomats, including the American ambassador, shaken but unharmed. They were followed by the cabinet ministers, leaving only President Diaz himself inside as a guarantee of continued negotiations. In the command center, Maya squeezed my shoulder as we watched the hostages being evacuated to safety. "You did it," she said simply. I shook my head. "We're not finished. Martinez is still armed, still dangerous, and still has the president." The final phase of negotiations stretched through the night. Martinez, perhaps sensing his physical strength ebbing as his illness advanced, pushed for immediate constitutional changes, recognizing the military's special role in governance. Venezuelan legal experts worked alongside international observers to craft language that acknowledged military concerns without undermining democratic principles. By dawn, a framework agreement had been reached. President Diaz would remain in office but with a reconfigured cabinet including military representatives. Elections would be held within 6 months under international supervision. Most importantly for Martinez, a formal constitutional convention would be convened to address the relationship between civilian and military authority. As sunrise painted the Caracas skyline in gold and crimson, President Diaz emerged from the palace, escorted by Martinez himself in a carefully choreographed demonstration of reconciliation. The images broadcast worldwide showed not a defeated hostage-taker, but 2 Venezuelan leaders putting aside differences for national unity. Only those of us in the command center knew the truth, that Martinez had been offered private medical treatment in Switzerland, that international prosecutors had agreed not to pursue charges related to the hostage-taking, that the entire negotiated solution had been orchestrated to give a dying man his place in history without the bloodshed he had initially planned. 2 days later, after ensuring the stability of the transitional arrangements, I stood on the tarmac preparing to board our transport back to Geneva. Minister Guzman approached, extending his hand in gratitude. "Venezuela owes you a tremendous debt, Director Reeves," he said solemnly. "Our military analysts estimated at least 30 hostages would have died in an assault on the palace." "Sometimes the most effective response isn't force," I replied. "Understanding what drives people, even those we consider enemies, creates possibilities beyond confrontation." Guzman nodded thoughtfully. "A lesson our region has been slow to learn. Perhaps this will mark a turning point." As our aircraft lifted off from Venezuelan soil, I found Maya in the passenger compartment, reviewing medical data from the released hostages. "You knew exactly how to reach Martinez," she observed, "not as a terrorist, but as a man desperate for significance." "It's what my mother would have done," I replied, gazing out at the receding coastline below. "Find the human need behind the violent action." Maya studied me with her physician's perceptive gaze. "There was a time when you would have said you were following your mother's example. Now you simply recognize the parallel." Her observation struck me as profoundly true. Somewhere along this journey, I had stopped trying to live up to Sarah Reeves' legacy and simply become the leader I was meant to be. informed by her example but defined by my own experiences and insights. The Academy will need to teach that discernment, I said, mind returning to the challenge ahead. How to see beyond the immediate threat to the human needs driving it. Have you decided on a location yet? Maya asked. I smiled, an idea crystallizing. I think so. Not Geneva or New York, too removed from the realities our teams face. Somewhere symbolic of both conflict and reconciliation. Beirut? Maya suggested. Where your mother made her name. No, I decided. Sarajevo. A city that experienced the worst of human cruelty and has rebuilt itself through reconciliation. The perfect symbol for what we're trying to achieve. 6 months later, I stood on a hillside overlooking Sarajevo as construction crews broke ground on the International Crisis Academy. The modern facility, designed to blend harmoniously with the historic city, would eventually house training facilities for up to 500 specialists annually from every UN member state. The Secretary General had insisted on naming the main academic building after my mother, the Samantha Reeves Center for Crisis Diplomacy. Beside it would stand the Emotional Intelligence Assessment Facility, where candidates would undergo the revolutionary screening processes we had developed to identify those with the unique combination of tactical skill and emotional perception required for our work. As the ceremonial first stones were placed, I felt a profound sense of completion. What had begun as my personal journey to vindicate my mother's approach had evolved into something far greater, an institutional transformation in how the world responded to its most desperate moments. Director Keller, now retired but still a valued advisor, joined me at the overlook point. Quite a view, he remarked, surveying both the construction site and the historic city beyond. It seems appropriate, I replied. Building something new while honoring what came before. Keller nodded, his typically stern expression softened by rare satisfaction. When I first met you, you were fighting to prove your mother right. Now you're building institutions that will outlast us all. The work matters more than the vindication, I acknowledged, though I admit the vindication is satisfying. He chuckled, surprising me. You were never too emotional for combat, Reeves. You were simply ahead of your time in recognizing that emotion, properly understood, is a strategic asset, not a liability. Below us, the ceremony continued as diplomats and security officials from across the world toured the Academy plans. Among them were faces familiar from our journey. Singh, now commanding her own regional team. Dawson, recently promoted to Deputy Director of Operations. Even former Commander Harrington, who had found redemption as a training consultant specializing in leadership ethics. Maya approached, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. They're asking for you downstairs, Director. Apparently, no one wants to hear the Secretary General's speech until you've given yours. I accepted the glass with a smile. Speech giving was never in the job description when we started this journey. Neither was changing the entire paradigm of international crisis response, Maya countered. Yet here we are. As we made our way down to the ceremony, I paused to look back at the city that had endured so much suffering and emerged, renewed, the perfect metaphor for the work we did. Finding hope and human connection in the darkest moments, transforming crisis into opportunity for growth. They had called me too emotional for combat, never realizing that emotion properly channeled, deeply understood, was the most powerful force in resolving human conflict. That understanding had saved hundreds of lives directly under my command, and would now save thousands more through the institution we were building. The journey from rejected cadet to international director had been marked by struggle and sacrifice, but each step had been necessary to reach this moment. Each dismissal and doubt had strengthened my resolve to prove that empathy wasn't weakness, but our greatest strength in facing humanity's darkest hours. As I took the podium to address the assembled dignitaries, I touched my mother's diplomatic pin one last time. Tomorrow it would take its place in the Academy's Memorial Hall, alongside artifacts from crisis points throughout history, a reminder of where we had begun and how far we had come. Distinguished guests, I began, surveying the faces before me. We stand today at the intersection of history and possibility. For too long, the international community has approached crisis response through the lens of force and control. Today, we begin building an institution founded on a different principle, that understanding human emotion is not a liability in conflict, but our greatest asset in resolving it. The applause that followed wasn't just for me or even for the Academy itself, but for a transformation in thinking that would save countless lives in the years to come. A transformation that began with one woman who was told she was too emotional for combat, only to prove that her emotions were precisely what the world needed most. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.